So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you are joining us. And thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for the Spring 17 Release Overview Salesforce Admin webinar. I'm so excited to be joined today by fellow Salesforce evangelist Leanne Templeman. I'm, of course, Mike Gerholt, admin evangelist at Salesforce. And before we get started, I want to make sure we get a few things out of the way. So, of course, it wouldn't be a Salesforce Admins webinar without a forward-looking statement, which means please make all of your purchasing decisions based on current features and functionality and not on any new or unreleased features that we may demo. Being a Salesforce Admins webinar, we want you to be social with us. So, you can follow us on Twitter at Salesforce Admins, no I. And you can connect with other awesome admins using the hashtag AwesomeAdmin. If you're on Facebook, so are we. You can find us at Salesforce Admins. And on YouTube, we're also Salesforce Admins. Which reminds me, this webinar is being recorded, and it'll be posted to our YouTube page along with the webinar recap page, which was the same URL that you used to register. Okay, so you could have questions during this webinar, and we want to help get you answers. So join our admin webinar group for all of the Q&A. It's real easy. Just go to bit.ly/admin webinar group. And you don't have to wait to the very end to ask your question. Go ahead and ask them now. We have people standing by who can diligently answer them for you. If you're logged into our Salesforce Success community, just search on Salesforce Admins Webinars. Be sure to join the group so you can ask the questions. And of course, stick around to the very end where, if we have time, we will do a live Q&A. Okay, so today's agenda, jam-packed. In fact, this is a little bit longer of a webinar than we normally do because Spring 17 is filled with so many incredible features. So, to get us started, we're going to go through some release best practices. And then I'm going to turn it over to Leanne, who's going to jump into some features that your users are going to love. These are features that you're going to love to demo to them. Then we're going to cover some features that you, the Salesforce admin, will love. And we're going to wrap all of those in some amazing demos that Leanne has prepared for us. We'll end with some resources and, of course, jump into our webinar group for Q&A. So let's get started with release best practices. First, I think it's best to say we should plan ahead for our release. So Salesforce has 3 releases a year, and we're on the first one, Spring 17. We have a Summer 17 coming up and Winter 18. So to get ready for our releases, we should get a pre-release org. And these are orgs that allow you to see the features and functionalities in advance. Of course, read, download, and comb through the release notes. And watch the release readiness live. These come out early, and we have videos that we can share. Actually, Jillian and Leanne did a wonderful release video for admins. And then sit down and go through any sandboxes that you may need to be refreshed. If you have developers that are working on a new app, ask them if they need to refresh that sandbox so that they're working on the most current version. All right, that's the first part of planning ahead. Now let's talk about reviewing release notes. So what's included in the release notes? Well, the addition, availability, and setup are all included. These release notes are at releasenotes.docs.salesforce.com. You can read them online, or you can download the PDF. I personally like to download the PDF and go through it a few times and see which features are coming out that are automatically turned on and which features I need to enable as an admin. But I'd love to hear your tips on how you read the release notes. Visit the Idea Exchange. So, what's the Idea Exchange? It's a place where you, the customer, can influence releases. You can post ideas, suggestions for new features that you would love to see in the release. You can vote on ideas. This is a great way to show your enthusiasm towards an idea, and that may get into a release. And you can also comment on it, help the person refine their idea. You can participate right now by going to success.salesforce.com/idea search. And of course, this is a great group. So we have a release readiness and feature adoption group that you can join as part of the Success community. There you'll find admins who are reading through the release notes, asking questions and answering questions about new features. There'll be tips and webinars posted that you can join to see release features live and ask questions early. And it's a great group to help you stay ahead of the curve for all of your releases. So with that, I think we've planned ahead and given you some best practices for releases. So I'm going to turn it over to Leanne to talk about features your users will love.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. And I can't emphasize enough that last slide that you showed, joining that release group in the success community. I mean, all of the admins that are using features have questions about features. It really is the best place to go to connect with other admins. And, as admins, we are not only responsible for looking at what are the features that are going to impact how I'm building things in Salesforce, maybe what my apps look like, what my objects look like, what are new features that I've voted for on the Idea Exchange that I can now build with. But also, as an admin, we're really the ambassadors of bringing those features to our end users. I know I don't have many end users who made a habit of poring over the release notes, and so I always felt like it was one of my responsibilities to help coach them or train them on features that I know would be meaningful for them based on how they use Salesforce. So we're going to walk through some of the features your end users will love and how you can then demo and show them some features that you think will really make their day. So some of those features, these are really focused on that end user experience. So some of those features are how they're engaging with Chatter and collaboration. So if you're using Chatter and collaboration at your org, this is something that Chatter streams, having the new Chatter home in Lightning, company highlights. I mean, really, we're using the intelligence of Einstein to help bubble up the right information to your users and also giving them the opportunity to curate. We've got enhancements for list views. Many of us have users that no matter what objects they work in most often, they love list views. They love the ability to work in them quickly. And with Kanban Everywhere, there's another layer of list view features because now they can use that drag and drop interface wherever they are on their custom objects and across their Salesforce experience. I'm going to talk about favorites, which is one of my favorite features this release. I've been using that a lot here at Salesforce in my app, and of course updates and changes to search. So let's start talking about the collaboration updates. So in Spring 17, we have changes to what Chatter Home looks like to your users in Lightning. And one of those is Company Highlights. And Company Highlights is really powered by Einstein. And it is a smart feed that will bubble up to your users, even if they're not following them. They'll bubble up to your users items that are really popular, that are getting a lot of likes, that are new, items that are trending within your organization. So it helps your users kind of stay on top of what's going on because there might be a post going around that they haven't been tagged in yet or that isn't in one of their groups or one of the items they're following, but that is gaining a lot of traction and momentum in the company. And so this way with Chatter Highlights or Company Highlights, they can start to see that kind of smart trending list. But they also can create their own list. So with Chatter Streams, they can create curated lists of records that are important to them in different ways. So this is individual for your users. Each user can create up to 5. And you can always go back through and edit what's on them and rename them. But if you think it's potentially your Twitter user and you use like private lists on Twitter, it's kind of a similar idea to that. You can create a curated list of all of my team members or maybe projects that fall in a particular area that I'd like to follow, or maybe groups that fall in a particular area. Those are some of the areas that I'm using Chatter Streams personally, and I've found them really helpful. And you can create streams that combine different types of objects as well, which I think is pretty cool. We also have changes in how users can interact with list views. So in list views, many of us have users in Classic that love being able to edit within list views, and they can do that now in their Lightning list views. So they get all of the benefits of Lightning list views, which includes having those great list view charts, having that Lightning look and feel, being able to, as we're going to see, change it to a Kanban view. But they can also go through and edit and make changes to that list view within the Lightning list view. And this is something that many of us have users that were asking for in previous Lightning releases. And so this is a big win if you're working with a lot of records in one place, One thing I use a lot as well is you can use keyboard shortcuts and to toggle between records and edit them and save them. So I find that to be really fast for me when I'm updating a lot of records at once. And as I mentioned, I'm obviously very excited about this feature. We have Kanban. So if you saw Kanban when we first rolled out Lightning, it was the drag and drop board view for opportunities, and it was allowed you to not only visualize all of your opportunities by stage and have summarization levels for each of those stages, but also you could edit within that view, and you could start to drag and drop those cards across the view to not only view all of, say your big deals in one place, but also make changes to them or update status of them or click in and edit them further if needed. Now, everyone really likes that drag and drop view, but originally it was only for opportunities. So now in Spring 17, you can have Kanban on your custom objects. So you may have users that are working with custom apps you've built, or working with custom objects that are related to standard apps that you're using. And you can define what those key fields are. And you can also define what is the pick list field that they should be grouped by, or what is the number field that there should be summarizations for. And so your users can start to interact with the Kanban view and really customize it to say, here's what I want my view to look like, here's the fields that are important to me, and maybe I want to be able to edit beyond, or edit by dragging and dropping. So, and here's that customized view. So again, it's not just a one-size-fits-all, especially if you're working with custom objects. You may have different users that have different priorities. If they're working with, say, projects, maybe they have different summarization fields that they'd like to look at, or maybe they have different stages that they'd like to, or columns that they'd like to look at, and they can edit that right from the list view. So without going to setup, without going to a different screen, they can make changes to that list view and change how they work with it and really make it work for them. We also have favorites. So I've mentioned that this is my favorite feature in this release, partly because this is the one that I have been working with the most often. I've been using this since the day I had access to it. I have started using this across all of the apps in the Salesforce orgs that I work in my day-to-day job. And I really like it because what it has done is it's replaced any Chrome bookmarks I was creating, and it allowed me to have a pretty streamlined way to work between a bunch of different records. Or, before I had kind of a combination of, if I saw a Chatter post that had something really relevant for me, I might bookmark that in Chatter, but then also if there's records I was working with a lot, I may create a particular report for those records and bookmark that report. I mean, I had kind of a few different workarounds that I'm sure many of us do in order to go to those kind of top 20 places I spend the most time in Chatter or in Salesforce. And so now with favorites, you have that experience and your users have that experience right in Salesforce. All they have to do is click the star at the top of the page, and they'll be able to see that it's been added to their favorites. And then they can go and access that favorites list from wherever they are in Salesforce. One thing that I like is you can rename the favorites list, and you can edit it and reorder items down there and define what it looks like. And I often rename, list views and things like that I'm favoriting as well. Now, there are items that can't be favorited, and if something can't be favorited, Mike will talk about that a little bit more, but you'll just get a red bar, basically, that will come up and say this item cannot be favorited.
Thanks, Ian. So I'm like you. I use TweetDeck a lot for Twitter, and Chatter Streams now to me feels very natural, and I'm also able to group things that make sense in my head. So maybe my Chatter Streams work for everybody. I don't know, but I'm glad you pointed out. So things that you can favorite, obviously list, dashboards, reports, Chatter groups, record home for standard and custom objects, and users. So that's really cool. I like having a list of users. Things that you can't favorite, list views, files, tasks. You can't favorite other Chatter streams. Maybe that's a little too meta. So, but you can't do that. And notes, you can't favorite those either. So we talked a lot about all of these features. I think I want to see them in action. So I am going to throw it over to Leanne for a demo.
Awesome. I know, we love the demos. And the thing that's fun that I want to call out about this demo is I'm going to show you really end user features, and this is something that we also have available. We've got the quick path for this demo available on the website on admin.salesforce.com, because we really want you as admins to be able to bring this release to your users and just show them some of the features that they can take advantage of. So I'm here in my Lightning home, and the first place I'm going to go is Chatter. So I have my kind of familiar orientation, what I follow, items like bookmarks, but now I have a brand new section for company highlights and for streams. So if we take a look here, I've got company highlights, which is new, which is being called out, and this is the Einstein-powered element. So this means that even if I'm not following records, or even if I'm not following people, if there's an important update, I'm going to see it. And so this is a great thing to point out to your users, especially if you have users that are heavy Chatter users. And I would say, especially if they like social media and if they use Twitter, or if they're kind of familiar with the idea of curated feeds, I think they'll also really find streams meaningful. So I have my Chatter streams here, like my top account, my team, my top projects. And if I want to go through and edit an existing stream, I can always do that. So maybe I realized I had a typo here. I could go ahead and change that. And I can start to add different records to that stream. Now I want to point out that as I'm making changes to this stream, I have access to all of these different objects. So I don't have to have a stream that's limited by, a specific filter list on, say, a project filter list, right? I don't have to be limited by the object I'm looking at. I can just start to add different projects, and maybe I do want to add, an account that I know has a ton of projects right now, and I can add them as well to this list and have different types of objects curated in one place to have that feed that is most meaningful for me. So that's one way that we've really changed how users can start to interact with their updates and make a curated experience. We also have in the new navigation here, actually one thing I want to point out is as they're going through this new Lightning navigation, they have these carrots. Now this is from previous release, but I do always like to call it out because I think it is something that's a huge time saver. I know for me, while I'm in Lightning, I can just go to this carrot and I can add a new record right from that carrot. So even if I was on, a different tab, without maybe having multiple clicks to get to the new page or to get to a specific record or a specific list, I can just access it right from there. So I think that's something that's a great little win to point out to your users. So when I'm in my list view, I can see I've got the features of Lightning List View. That's great. I can edit if I need to. I can edit using my hotkeys on my keyboard, which is a big time saver. I also have access to, again, this is not a brand new feature, but features like the list view charts. So again, if you've got heavy list view users, if you've got users that love running reports or love having, kind of their curated information, if they want to work with a certain way, getting them onto list view charts, and we can create their own custom charts here, is a really great way to help them really learn to love Lightning. But we have our new Kanban feature. So now I'm in this custom object for projects, and I'm in my list view, and I have a new option in Spring to display as Kanban. So I'm going to go ahead and display as Kanban, and I have that board view. And so this defaulted to some of the fields that it thought I would like, but I can go ahead and take a look at my Kanban settings right from that gear switch here. So again, I don't have to leave this screen, and I can start to customize and say, okay, where do I want that budget to come from? That's summarized by is going to be these numbers here at the top of each group section, and I can pick what I want my grouping to be by. So I feel good about what my settings are, and now I can start to work with my records. So as I'm making these changes, I can see those summarized fields are going to change. If I know that I'm maybe moving something from planning to active, that's great. Maybe I know that we completed a project, I can go ahead and move that, and maybe we're going to move this back to planning. So I can start to make those changes and work with these records right from this view. And again, even when you're in Kanban, you still have access to your charts if you're working with that. So it really becomes this kind of complete workspace. Now, if this is one of your favorite list views, you might want to favorite it. So another fun feature to point out is your favorites. So I have my little star here, and I have the add favorite. And because I am able to favorite this type of list view, I can say, okay, all FY projects is added to your favorites. But maybe I want to curate that favorites list a little bit and make it just right. So if I click onto it, I can see all of my current favorites, but I can also edit it. So this is a pretty important list view to me. So I'm going to move it up to the top of my favorites. And I can even change the name of it if I want. So, well, you shouldn't do that. But I can even change the name of it if I want. So So I know exactly, this is my favorite thing that I want to look at right now, so I can make that change. And now I can, from wherever I am in Salesforce, I can always just go right back to that list view. So those are a few of those features that are really a big win, again, for your end users to kind of give them the ability to access information wherever it's going to be relevant to them. One last thing I'd like to point out is some changes to search. So when you click into search, we immediately see anything you've looked at recently, but I can also start to define, and this is brand new, where I want to search. So if I type in lead, for example, I can search lead within all of Salesforce, just the string of the lead. I can search lead within projects, or I can say I want to limit my search to leads. And so now I've predefined the object I want to search, and so if I type in a name, I'm searching any within leads. So that's little kind of quick efficiency gains that you can bring over to your users. So I think we do have some more slides, so I'm going to pass it back off to Mike so we can talk about ways that you can build out even more customization in spring 2017.
Great. Thanks, Leanne. I love the favorites. Love it, because related history just never worked for me, but favorites work. Okay, so we covered.
Would you say it's your favorite feature?
Yeah, I would. I would put a star next to it. I'd put a star next to it. Add it to my drop down. I think that's a good call. It's a favorite of a favorite. So, lots of really cool features for admins to demo to their users. I think we should point out features that admins will love.
Yes. I think that's a great idea. So we started with, here's things for you to show your end users, here's some kind of quick wins, and also, as users, you might enjoy those features as well, I hope. But there's a whole slew of new features in Lightning in Spring 17 for admins to further customize the experience. So Lightning has really given us admins and those of us who spend more time, with declarative and with clicking functionality and coding, it's really given us a lot of tools to customize the experience that previously, frankly, we would have had to get an app exchange package for, we would have had to code for, and that is only continuing to be the case with every release. So in spring, we have even more features that bring you kind of increased ability to make these customized experiences with clicks, which I'm very excited about. So one of those features is Lightning Console Apps. And console apps, you may have worked with console apps in Salesforce Classic, maybe the Service Cloud console or Sales console or maybe custom console. But that concept of having a really efficient workspace, you create your specific types of users that allows them to toggle between many records without moving their place, and to have multiple projects open or multiple records open with the related subtabs. But what's really cool is in Lightning, so not only do we have that ability now to create these custom console apps, but also we've got utility bar, which really supercharges not only your console apps, but also just all of your Lightning apps with the ability to add components that are app specific that are going to be available throughout your app experience. And Path. So again, this is similar to Kanban. Many of you may have seen Path when we first rolled out Lightning on the opportunity. It was this guided opportunity sales path that allowed you to really create an experience, a process experience for your sales users that coached them through each step and gave them visual indicators of where they were in a deal. Well, now you have paths for your custom objects. So now you can create a path and you can create that visual process to add right on the record page for wherever you are. And flow components. So I love flow. I'm a big visual workflow fan, and I continue to be very excited about the ways in which we can use flow in Lightning. So let's talk first about how you can create this, customized experience for your users. So with utility bar, the best way to think about utility bar is it's a docked item or a number of docked items at the bottom of the page. So it's something that pops up from the bottom of the page. Think about like in your GChat windows, right? It pops up from the bottom of the page while your users are in an app, and your utility bar is going to be app specific, which means that when you're creating a utility bar, you'll be creating it in the App Manager when you're creating a Lightning app. And you can add any standard or custom component. So there might be similar to, back when we all started building like global actions and record-specific actions, there may be some components that you add to all of your apps in the utility bar. Maybe Chatter Publisher, right? If you've got a lot of Chatter usage in your org, you may very well add that standard component to the utility bar for all of your various apps, because that is something that generally probably all of your users will want to have access to. But you also, because it's app specific, you can also create specific utility bar items and that are really unique to that app. So that might be a really specific chart for that app. That may be a flow that's specific for that app. So you can start to customize that experience and ensure that as users are working throughout your Lightning apps, whether that's a console app or a standard Lightning app, they can get to those kind of actions or those components that illustrate what they most often do. And you can add this to, you can add it to your sales Lightning app. You can also add it to your new custom Lightning app. So I'm very excited about Utility Bar. And this is a great, for those of you too who are working with developers and looking at Lightning, it's great to bring this to your developers and to be aware of this. This is just another place that you can expose components if you are working on custom components. Another place you can expose components to your users and by app usage. So I've talked a little bit about console so far. Lightning console apps are now in beta in Spring 17. So that means you have access to them if they should be in your org in Lightning. I encourage you to go take a look, especially if you're a console user. But even if you're not a console user today in Classic, go take a look. If you're not quite ready to build one on your own, the Lightning Sales and Lightning Service consoles are available in Lightning in Spring 17 as well. So that's a great place to start, just to click into one of those from your app launcher and to click around and to get experience with kind of what that console looks like. Try to open multiple tabs and see what it looks like to have a lot of different records open. But you can also then start to create custom ones. So a lot of us have users that aren't, maybe they're working with a lot of custom objects, maybe they're service and project management, or maybe they're doing sales and service, or they're doing sales and implementation, and they need more customization with what's available in their console. Well, you can create that experience for them with Lightning Console apps and really allow them to work between multiple tabs quickly without having to have, I know many of us have been in an experience where we have 14 different Chrome tabs open, and this means that hopefully it will decrease the number of not only tabs you have to have open, but then combined with favorites and decrease the number of bookmarks. I mean, really, we're bringing that efficiency all within Salesforce. And so another feature that helps you, we see this on the screen with the path, another feature that helps you customize that experience for users and highlight business processes, right? Like as admins, we spend a lot of time defining processes often, implementing business processes, owning specific business processes, especially for custom apps that we've built. And you may have coaching already in the form of maybe validation rule, error messaging, or maybe help fields, things like that. Path really allows you to replace a lot of that with a core feature, because you can create a path for any of your custom objects that coaches your users through the process for that. Because it's not only a visual representation of the fields, like we see the pretty picture here where we've got the bar, and we've got the 2 check marks, and we can see what stage we're at, and we can edit stages right from path. But also below, we have the key fields. And that's something that you define as an admin. So when you go into Lightning Setup and you search for paths, you can create new paths for different objects, and you can define what are the fields that's really important for this stage. What are the coaching elements? What are the links or the tips that we need to put in that kind of coaching detail area? And so it allows you to not only visualize where something is on a stage, but also help enforce those business processes that I know a lot of us have spent a lot of time creating. So we want to make sure that we're making our end users successful with them. So let's go to the next slide. Another feature that, and if you were able to tune in, or if you've seen the video for our admin keynote last fall, we showed this and we were really excited about it, and we still are excited about it. Flows are in Lightning App Builder. It is in beta. It doesn't mean you have access to it today. So what does this mean? If you've used visual workflows in the past, if you've built visual workflows with screens for your users, you've most likely had to go through the process of deploying them via a button, deploying them via a link, having to kind of define how do we allow our users to click into this flow. Usually it opens like another tab or you've got it in another screen. Now in Lightning, you can deploy visual workflows to your users with a component. So that means no buttons, no code, no going into another screen or another tab. They can interact with components right from the page that they're in. And that's, to me, that's huge. One of the things I always struggled with Flow is if I want people to be like requesting help on an object or a record, they need to be able to see that for their notes in order to put the appropriate flow details in, or details into the flow, right? And so I'm asking them to go to a whole other screen, and I'm taking them away from the information that they're going to be sharing. And so this allows you to have that experience right in the page. And what's more, we're going to see this, you're not even just limited to adding it to the page for a record. You can add it to a home screen. You can add it to a new Lightning tab. You can add it to the utility bar. So you have a lot of options with how you can roll out flows. And if you haven't played with visual workflows before, if you've never created one, I would say that this is a great time to start experimenting with building your first visual workflow, because the ability to roll it out to your users in a meaningful way just got a lot easier. And we have even more updates with Flow. Mike, what else is coming for Flow?
So we have something really cool called two-column flow screens. So you mentioned in the previous slide about flows, and flows can obviously get triggered in a lot of different ways, but you can also make flow screens, which allow your users to collect information. Now, until Spring 17, they were, kind of long, skinny columns of fields. Depending on how many fields you added, it was, less than awesome. So in Spring 17, we made them awesome. And now you can break those screens up into 2 columns. And 2-column flows are available in Lightning, Classic, and all versions of the Salesforce One app. So that's great in case you're still in Classic. However, they only take effect for flows that use Lightning Runtime. Now, Lightning Runtime looks and feels like Lightning Experience, where Classic Runtime looks like Classic. So you may have a question about that, and I want to make sure we'll post a link that explains all about different runtimes. The good news is that nothing has changed since the beta version of the 2-column layout. So if you were in the beta version, nothing when it went GA has changed since then. So now, if you don't already have seatbelts on your chairs, you should get ready. You should buckle them. You should perhaps put something heavy on your lap, because Leanne's about to demo all of these features, and it's amazing. Literally, it's amazing.
That's quite the intro there. So I am really excited to show some of our Spring 17 features. And I think, one of the things that's changing with Lightning, and that has changed really our experience for admins, and that I'd love for everyone to keep in mind, is all of these various options with how we can assign pages and apps and expose components. They are opening up a huge world of possibilities for us as admins with how we build apps. So this is a wonderful time, especially if you're thinking about building in Lightning for users, to really get those creative juices flowing and think about all these changes to how much control you have to build for your users. So we're back in Lightning, but now we're going to spend some more time in setup. So I do want to show you these apps, and I keep saying Lightning apps. All of those are accessed from the app launcher. So when I click on that, the cool little rainbow waffle on the top left of my Lightning screen, this is where I get to all of my various apps. And so I have my console apps. I've got my objects, my tabs that I work with most often. And we saw earlier I was working with projects quite a bit, right? So I've got some heavy project management users in this organization, and they can get to their project tab, they can favorite it, but I want to create a brand new app for them. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Setup. So another thing that's nice is now Setup opens in a separate tab, which I personally love. And so in Lightning Setup, I'm going to go to the App Manager. And just to give you a lay of the land, if you haven't been in Lightning Setup yet or often, these apps here it's going to show me all of my apps I have in Salesforce, whether it's a classic app, whether it's a connected app, whether it's a Lightning app. But I can see from this checkbox if it's visible in Lightning or not. So I do have some, classic apps that are visible in Lightning. I have Lightning apps that are obviously visible in Lightning. But I also have classic apps that I have not brought to Lightning. So my Milestone Scan app is one of those. And the reason I didn't bring it to Lightning is because I wanted to create a brand new Lightning experience instead of bringing that classic app over. So I click New App, and we're going to call this Project Central. And the Project Manager Console app. I do love to put good descriptions in here because this is what shows up in that app manager. It's great for end user adoption to help them know that they're in the right place. I'm going to go ahead and bring in my logo, my nice project management logo, and I can even change the color. So we're going to make this a green. I'm trying to make it not too obnoxious of a green. There we go. So I've got my little preview here of what this will look like in the app manager. I've got my update or my description and my name. Perfect. Now I have my app options. So in app options, new is console navigation. So we have the option here to select that standard navigation, which is what we were in earlier in our sales app. But I can also select console navigation, which is what I'm going to pick. Now we get into the utility bar. The utility bar, as I mentioned, it's a fixed footer at the bottom of your app page. This is the app specific that your users can access no matter where they are in your Lightning app. So I'm going to start adding items. Now, when I click add, I have all of these components. I have all my standard components that I have available here. And there's a few that I'm going to add, frankly, probably to all of my Lightning apps. And those are going to be like Chatter Publisher. So with Chatter Publisher, I can say, okay, I want it to be called, we'll just say like Post Chatter, and we'll have the nice feed icon. And if you can grab all the cool icons from the Lightning design system, if you just click on that link, there's a ton of existing icons. I can define what I want it to look like, how big it should be, what type of post it should be. Perfect. I feel good about that. I'm also going to add notes. Now this is because my users are using notes really heavily, and I want them to be able to quickly access all the notes that they've written most recently. So this will allow them to open up their notes and to get into their notes from the utility bar. So I've got my notes, icon is notes, that's predefined for me. So those are two that I would probably end up adding to a lot of my apps if that's something that my users are using. But now I'm going to add some that are really specific for this project console. One of those will be flow. So I can see here I've got my flow beta. That is a new standard component type that's available to me. And I can name it. So I'm not going to call it flow beta. I'm going to call it maybe request help. And then if I wanted to say like find a different icon or something like that, I can say, maybe we'll call this broadcast. I need help. And so that will be changing. Perfect. I can define the size. So this is where, if I did have a lot of fields, I might want to make it taller. And then I can pick the flow. So any flow you have that has a screen and is activated will be available here. So if you have flows that have user screens and they're active, you'll be able to pick them here. And I could make it a 2-column. So because it's on the utility bar, I'm going to keep it 1 column, but that 2-column access for flow comes through as components. So if you are adding a flow component to like the wide section on your homepage, for example, you might want to make it 2-column. That might be a great way to expose it. So that looks great. I'm going to add one more. Let's add a report chart. We'll call this project, I'll just say, project overview chart. And maybe I'll give this a nice little chart icon. Great. Define the size again. Now here's where all of my reports that I've created that have a chart tied to them, I can select from one of those. So I do have my project status view. And because the report is created with a My filter, I'm not going to add an additional filter here. But maybe I'll make the refresh button available in case they're making a lot of updates with Kanban and you want to be able to refresh their chart right away. So I feel good. I've got 4 utility bar components. I can always come back and add more later if I want. But now I'm going to add my tabs. So I'm going to add accounts. That's always good. I've got my calendar, of course, Chatter. That's important. Dashboards, always great. Groups, yes. And then let's get down to projects. Perfect. So this is, maybe you've worked with this before if you've created an app in Classic or selecting all the tabs you want to have available. Now we're going to assign a profile. So it's sysadmin, I want to have access to it, and I want my project managers to have access. Perfect. So we've saved our app. Let's go take a look. So I go back to the app launcher, and I can see my brand new Project Central. Let's bring this up here because it's now my #1 favorite app. Click into it. And I'm in my brand new console app. So I'm on my account, which is the first tab I have selected, but I can start to open more tabs, more records, and I can have, multiple tabs open at once and start to toggle between, maybe I'm working a lot with Chatter, so I want to be able to go to my company highlights right away, but I also want to be able to go to specific projects, right? So we're going to go to one of our projects, like initial installation, and I've got all these tabs still open. So again, I know I end up with so many Chrome tabs, so this is a huge efficiency win for me personally and for a lot of my users, just to be able to have all our tabs in one place. But when I go in here, I can view that record. If I start to open up items that are related to this record, I can see them show up here, right? So I've got my tab for initial installation and then all of my sub-tabs, which is great. Now, while I'm working with these, I may also want to stay close to Chatter. So I can use my utility bar down here. If we go to the bottom, we can see that's where all of my utility bar items are living. I can open up my project overview chart and load that chart. I can even request help and start to engage with that flow. I need a customer reference, please. And submit that flow from right there. So this is really helping my users how to engage with this console app. But we're not quite done. We made this custom app, and I feel really good about the tabs we selected. I feel really good about the utility bar. But the page isn't quite optimized yet. It defaulted, if you notice, it defaulted to the related list. There's a ton of related list items here. And I think it could have some more coaching and some more help. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Edit Page. And I'm in the Lightning App Builder for this project page. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a path, because I did create a path for my project, which means that I've got my project path here, and I can see the stages. Now I do like to add it under the highlights here. It is a long component. It looks the best there. And I also want to make this a little more usable. So it defaulted to related. I don't feel like this is the most useful way to look at it. So I'm going to change my default tab to details. But I think I'm going to also try to clean up this related list, because there's just so many related items here, and really what my users care about the most is milestones. So I defaulted this to details, but now I'm going to add an additional tab for milestones, because there's some new features, also a new standard component in Spring, and one of them is a brand new related list. So we'll call this milestone. So what I've done here is I've created a brand new tab, but there's nothing in it yet. And in Spring, we now have a brand new standard component called related list. So it can be a little confusing because it's related list or related list. Now the related list, the plural, will be all of those related lists that are on your page layout for that record. So you might have, on an account, for example, you might have 8 or 9 different related lists that are on that page layout that are connected to that record. But if you want to customize the page experience, now you can select just one of those if it makes sense for your users and add it. So what I've done is I've really called out specifically that milestone, and maybe I'll also make that the default because I know that's super important to them. So I've called out just that one specific item of the related list and bubbled it up there. So I feel like this is great. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And when I activate it, now I have a lot more control over who can see it. Because frankly, my account managers, they don't need to see the milestones. My account managers don't need to see the tasks because they're not actively working on projects. That's for project managers. So because of that, I'm going to assign it just to this Project Central. And so I've assigned it to that app page. I can also assign it to specific profiles and start to have really granular assignment rules to make sure that I'm customizing all these pages and taking advantage of everything just right in the right way for our users. So now when I go back, I can see I've got that brand new page. I've got my path with all of my different stages and my coaching for those stages. I've got my brand new milestones, and I defaulted to details. So those are just a few of the ways that you can start to create these really customized experiences for your users using Lightning. So Mike, are you excited to build some new Lightning console apps?
I was literally so excited I forgot to get myself off mute. That's how excited I was. No, what I was going to say is, and we walked through this demo yesterday, and seeing it again, pre-Lightning, I feel like you used to just kind of go to a record and like look at it like it was a museum piece. And now I feel like after your demo, not only do you go to record, but like it's a workspace. Like you can dive in and do actionable things and get insights and like post to chatter and grab that information and kind of move on to everything else that you need to do, as opposed to just like walking past a display of record data. Okay, all right, so resources, what do we need? We have a lot, actually. So release notes, we put a link to those in the group and put a link to those in the chat. Definitely go through those. Those are where we go for all of our information. I mentioned the Success Readiness Release Group, word order. The release dates calendar, which you can find, we'll put a link to, that's also on Trust. And then it just came out today, and I'm going to give a shout out to the first person I saw on Twitter that had it, which was Jennifer Lee, the spring release Trailhead module. So that's a great way to get hands-on with all of the release features, and you get a Trailhead module badge, and who doesn't want that? So I hope to see a lot of those. And then we put a link down at the bottom for all of the customer resources that we have. In addition to this webinar and to all of the Trailhead modules and to all of the release docs, we are having a Salesforce Spring launch event. So if you go to our website, we'll put a link. You can sign up if you're in the San Francisco area. And if you're not, that's okay. We have viewing parties, and we have lots of fun ways for you to join and see all of the amazing Spring 17 stuff that we have coming up. So just wrapping up, we have people jumping into our Salesforce admins webinar group. We know there's a lot of questions in there, so we may be small, but we're mighty. We will try to get to those. There's a survey. If you go to bit.ly/AWS survey-spring17, you get all that. Fill out the survey, let us know how we did. We ran a little bit long today, but there's so much for us to tell you. That's why. And then, of course, we will have the slides available and a recording at bit.ly/AW-spring17. So I know we ran long. Put your questions into the chatter group, and we will dive in there and start answering them. In the meantime, thank you for joining the Spring 17 webinar from the Salesforce Admins Group.